Well, good morning, everyone. I'm still in my nightgown, but I wanted to jump on bright and early today and get my YouTube exclusive out. And what I wanted to talk about is Mars moving into Cancer. So that is going to hit tomorrow. It's going to stretch all the way through the end of September, but I have an extra spin I want to bring to the Martian Cancerian energy that we'll be dealing with. And that is if you've been fighting with the fridge lately or finding yourself kind of in a role where you're over caretaking, this transit may have already activated a little bit of that. So I'm going to walk through a couple things with you. I have a couple of screens going, but if you have noticed yourself over caretaking or maybe hanging out with the fridge more than usual lately, it's a good idea to get in front of that right now so you're not struggling with that for the next 6 weeks. So I figure let's start with some groundwork here with Mars. I think Mars is one of those planets that sometimes gets a bad rap, just like Saturn and Pluto. Um, you know, Mars isn't just anger or ambition. It is, but not only, right, in the body. When we're talking about the physical body, Mars is really drive. I'm a gym witch. I do that whole fitness witchery thing. And I'll tell you what, Mars and an altar and offering station for Mars in this arena is fabulous. But it's the part of you that says, really, like, I want this and I'm going after it, right? That's your Martian spirit. And where Mars sits in your chart, honestly, here, it really shapes how that urge is going to get expressed. And right now, with transiting Mars, it is moving through Cancer. And that sign is the sign of home, it's appetite, it is emotional nourishment. And so that matters for everyone in the next 6 weeks because it especially matters for people like me whose natal Mars is honestly already in Cancer and retrograde in the 12th house. And we'll talk about that. I'm going to use my chart as an example today. But if you know where your natal Mars is, I'm going to tell you how to find it. You can kind of get in front of this. And I just completed my second book on the astrodiagnostics of metabolic control, weight loss, weight management. And so any of you that are following me or working with me on the Grave Intention site for that metabolic control, this is a very important kind of EDU I'm rolling out for you guys today. So Mars is going to be lighting up your placement directly if you're a Cancer placement, but it's going to be lighting you up no matter what. So we're going to talk about where to find where that light up is going to occur. All right, so let's check out my chart, shall we? So here's my natal chart. My Mars sits at 27 degrees Cancer retrograde in my 12th house. Yay me, right? So there's a few things happening at once here. So a Cancer Mars already wants to be fed and it wants to feed others. That's the baseline of this Mars. Retrograde Mars is actually going to take that drive inward. It's before it turns it outward. So that's like another layer to the activity here. So like for me, for example, I don't act first. I process first, sometimes for a really long time before anyone sees it. And the 12th house is the house of the hidden, right? It's the private. It is what happens behind closed doors. It's that aloneness, right? And so if you put all of this together, like my version of the pattern personally here doesn't look like fighting anyone at the dinner table, right? It looks like this quiet, private, comfort eating, okay? Or quietly sort of overextending myself, taking care of things that nobody really sees. That's the shape of my Mars in Cancer, full stop there, right? There's no transit required to activate it. That is my normal natal Mars. So let's talk about what, tomorrow through around September 27th is going to do to that specifically. So transiting Mars enters Cancer at 0 degrees. And it spends these 6 weeks sort of moving across the sign, which means at some point during this window, it's going to cross my exact natal Mars at 27 degrees. When a transiting planet in any area of your chart, trans-Neptunian or otherwise, lands exactly on your own natal placement like that, it's not a subtle nudge, right? It's an activation, full-on activation. And whatever your Mars already does in your chart, this is the moment where that's going to get really loud for you. So for me, as an example, that means this private, like 12th house version of this pattern, right? And it's going to want my attention whether I plan for it or not. So, I'm going to plan for it. So this is the same kind of reading, placement reading that I did way back on September 9th of 2024 for myself. I sort of sat down and actually looked at my own chart instead of the scale, because at that time I was 280 pounds. And for years I had stopped weighing myself. I think I topped out somewhere between 300 and 320, like 300 and 320-ish maybe. But like today I'm 169. But this is where it started, was me sitting down and looking at my Mars. So this is kind of what we call in medical astrology the decumbiture thread, right? So when I did that reading, that's kind of where everything shifted for me. It's like actually the whole opening of this new book I just did. It's called What the Sky Knows About Your Weight. So when we're talking about metabolic health and astrology and diagnostics with that, that's what we're talking about. And I'm not saying that this transit is that big for you, but it's a good example for awareness. Awareness is preparedness. And I'm saying that this same skill set, really the same kind of looking at your own natal blueprint, can really kind of point to what these next 6 weeks are going to be for you. Maybe this next 6 weeks is a great time to start some sort of fitness program or a new diet program or a new supplementation program. Or, maybe this is a 6-week period where you need to do the mental emotional work to prepare for something new. It could look different for everybody, but I do specialize in astrodiagnostics for weight loss and weight management. And this is a huge window for people that are like I was back in 2024, kind of struggling to take control of that. So there's a couple different things that you can do if you need to appease your Mars during this period. Personally, for me, I think temporary planetary altars, specifically for offerings, are a good idea. If you are working on a metabolic change right now, especially with Mars and Cancer. So, that can be very, very simple. This doesn't have to be a permanent altar. You don't have to have 20, 30 altars going, just a very small Martian altar. Doing weekly offerings, keeping a log there of your fitness or health goals right now, to keep focus on that, to kind of stay out of the fridge at 9 o'clock at night, and to stop giving so much of yourself to where you are running on empty. We all have to have boundaries, and we have to enforce those boundaries. And so a Martian altar can help us do that planetary influence and persuasion in our day-to-day life. So I have a couple of different ideas I write about on my website. I also just did an article for Substack that talks about this, so check that out. It's free to subscribe. But the other thing, too, is you can check your own chart for free. There's so many websites now. You don't have to go out and buy Solar Fire, although Solar Fire is my favorite, and that's what I use. But, you can check this out in under a minute. As long as you know your birth date, birth time, birth location, look at your natal chart, look for your Mars, identify where it is. Take note of the sign that it's in. That's going to tell you the flavor of what the next 6 weeks are going to be. Take note of the house that it's in. That is going to tell you where in your life that this energy is going to show up. So if your Mars is in Cancer, like mine, this transit is direct for you. So it's important to kind of have that information. If it's somewhere else in your chart, look at what house Cancer rules in your chart. That's where these next 6 weeks are really going to be felt. So, I just want to kind of leave you guys with some food for thought here. Ask yourself too, going into this next 6 weeks, like, where has taking care of yourself quietly sort of turned into like feeding a feeling, right? Where is that occurring in your life? Or where has taking care of everyone else kind of become the same thing aimed outward? I think just going into the next 6 weeks with that baseline information, you're already ahead of the game, because you know where your vulnerabilities are and you know how to work with those. And you don't have to answer this question today. It's just something to think about. Just start noticing it. Mars is going to keep asking you this through the end of September. So if you can answer the question first before Mars answers it for you, you're going to be ahead of the game. But other than that, you guys stay magical, and thanks for subscribing on our YouTube.